Okay, we're in order.
Yeah. So I just want to go over the adjustments to the agenda. The first item that I have is item 5A2. That's the letter, the proposed letter to the Oregon Country Fair. I'd like to pull that and have it not discussed and not acted on today due to press of business. And also, Ms. Jones and I have arranged to have certain items moved to March 13, given the circumstances of this meeting. Secondly, I want to state that Ms. Jones and I have talked about having a further discussion on more public comment options for the board. And I'd like to also move that to March 13 and not try to do that today, given the emergency we're under. And next item is the emergency. We do have emergency business to declare an emergency to be able to apply for state assistance. And we just recently posted the proposed board order on the emergency, and we'll take that up under emergency business during the meeting. Another item I want to go over is because of the bad weather and the difficulty of people getting to the board meeting, myself included, I'd like to make sure that we know the status of all the commissioners and if they're able to participate all day or if there's portions of the meeting that they're not able to participate. So perhaps in alphabetical order, we can go down the list and commissioners could state whether they will be able to attend the meeting for the full duration of the meeting or if there's parts of the meeting they won't be able to attend. So go ahead, Jay.
Are you doing this in alpha order?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Joe, and then Jay.
Okay. Yeah, as long as I got it.
Jay, it'd be Joe, Jay, and then Heather, and then Commissioner Farr and me.
Yes, I'm available all day so long as I have power.
Heather here. I'm available all day. Oh, I'm sorry, Jay. I just pulled in front of you.
That's okay. I am only available for about the next 2 hours here in D.C., unfortunately. And I have to get out of an Uber right now, so I'm going to take the phone away from my ear for a second.
Okay, and I'll just say that. Oh, go ahead, Pat. Sorry.
I'm confused by your order of the agenda here, Pete.
Well, are you available all day?
I'm back.
I am actually here, Pete.
Yeah, good. Excellent. And are you available all day?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, so are there any other adjustments to the agenda?
Yeah. Chair, I'd like to have it.
Say who's speaking, please.
I'm sorry, Pat.
Say
Burney.
who's speaking. Thank you.
Joe Burney. I would like to have a discussion yet again about the voters' information guide versus the voters' information pamphlet at the end of item 6B in the agenda, Mr. Chair, where I will have some comments, share my frustrations with the process, and intend to ask for reconsideration.
So you want to have a discussion related to the vote by the people?
I want what I requested. I would like, after item 6B in the agenda, to have some comments, share my frustrations with the process, yet ask for reconsideration of the voters' information pamphlet.
Okay, very good. Are there any other adjustments to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we will now move to our public comment. And Commissioner Farr, since you're there, could you get the list and take over the meeting for the purpose of receiving the public comment?
Yes. So I need a clarification on this. It's very awkward having the person trying to run the meeting not be present. So my recommendation is that I have the gavel in hand right now for public comment. My recommendation is that I keep the gavel for the entire balance of the meeting.
Well, we'll see how it goes. Why don't you just do the public comment for now?
Okay, we have completed adjustments to the agenda. I have the gavel. Public comments, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Speakers will be called up in the order that they signed up. At the end of 3 minutes, I'll give you a signal, hand signal, there won't be an audio signal, that you have concluded 3 minutes. Please finish your statement at that point in time. Today's meeting is being televised live, and it will also be rebroadcast. So, I will call the first speaker and then the subsequent, the speaker on deck. So first speaker signed up today is Sean Shivers, who will be followed by Matthew Keating. Mr. Shivers, please approach the mic, state your name and address for the purpose of the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sean Shivers. I live at the corner of High and 11th Street, so 322 East 11th. And I am here today about the voters pamphlet, so I want to begin by thanking Joe for putting that back on the agenda. Personally, I'm not sure why it's even a question. It's clear to me that we can't rely on Facebook and other single sources for our news about something as important as our elections. So I really encourage the board to vote in favor of printing a voters pamphlet this year. Democracy is just too important to risk on what people may happen to hear. I really don't have anything beyond that, and thank you all for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Shivers. Next is Matthew Keating, who will be followed by Michael McFadden.
Good morning, Commissioners. Matthew Keating, 2486 Blackburn Street, Eugene, Oregon. For those of you on the phone, if you're not watching at home, I think I'm looking like a Star Wars character with my snow boots almost up to my knees and sporting a sport coat. I want to echo Mr. Shivers' gratitude of your public service. Thank you for what you do day in and day out for our county, and I want to recognize the work that the folks are putting into restoring power here in Lane County and making sure that we have access to the roads to get basic needs and to go to work, which I'll be doing after this testimony. I'm here today in regards to the voters pamphlet. A voters informational pamphlet is much different than just a voters informational guide. And you all are all here not only because you poured thousands of countless hours into your campaigns, but you're here because voters recognized in their voters pamphlet your candidacy and your merits of your candidacy. And this 2019 special election, we have special education districts and candidates all across the county whom the only way they can communicate with their potential constituents is through a voters informational pamphlet. Much different than just a voters informational guide, which would be limited information time and time again by registering thousands upon thousands of voters and knocking on tens of thousands of doors. I hear from Lane County voters that they will wait and see who they're going to vote for based on the information that's sent to them in the voters pamphlet. Commissioners, I believe as public servants, we'd be shirking our duty if we didn't give the information to the public that's necessary for them to make an informed decision when it comes time to vote. I implore you, please, reconsider the motion and produce a voter's informational pamphlet for the sake of democracy and educate our electorate. And while we're on the topic of voting, I am also implored by our chair, Mike Eister, at Lane Community College Board of Education, which I serve, to please consider a voter's a voting ballot box at Lane Community College. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your reconsideration.
Thank you, Mr. Keating. The last person signed up today is Michael McFadden. Mr. McFadden, would you approach the mic, state your name and address to the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Mike McFadden. I live at 986 Lincoln in downtown Eugene. And I just want to say that as a neighbor and a community member, my thoughts are with all of our residents across the county as we're dealing with this extreme weather event. I know that people have been impacted in innumerable ways. As I was coming to the building this morning, I actually heard the Amtrak train pulling into the station that has the 100+ passengers who had been stranded for almost 2 days on that train outside of Oak Ridge. And then considering, you know, the motorists who are stranded on the interstate south of Cottage Grove, you know, I think that extreme emergencies like this really demonstrate how people come together, how we check in on our neighbors, we take care of our most vulnerable in our communities, and we do our best to step up and offer to help where we can. And so I want to thank everybody who is out there, our first responders, our utility workers, our public works personnel who are out there doing this imperative work to clear the roads and restore the power, like the previous speaker said. But I do want to underscore that in emergencies like this, truly the most vulnerable amongst us are the hardest impacted. And that doesn't just mean people who are unhoused, but it also means people who live in housing that is without power, people who rely on wood heat, people who are elderly, people who live in isolated places in our very rural, vast county. So I really think that it's important that we, as people, institute our government amongst ourselves to magnify our community-mindedness and to multiply our power to do good for one another in these trying times. So again, I want to thank everybody who's participating and helping their neighbors. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. McFadden. That concludes the number of people who have signed up to speak today. Anyone else in the audience wishing to address the full Board of County Commissioners? While you only see one county commissioner here, all 4 of us are present, 4 of them electronically. Anyone else wishing to address the Board of County Commissioners? I see none. Concludes the public comments. Item number 3 is Commissioner's response to public comments and/or issues or remonstrance.
And let me just say that on this item 3, if any commissioners have any further adjustments to agenda, let me know, because I forgot to mention that I'm not available. I'm only available until noon today, and so Ms. Jones was concerned that there might be a quorum problem for 1:30, and I'm not able to be there at 1:30, and I'll ask that the vice chair take over the meeting at 1:30 p.m. Are there any commissioners that want to make a remonstrance?
Commissioner Sorensen, do you want the gavel back?
Yeah. I guess I'll take it back with the idea that it can be telephonically transferred. Good. So does anybody want to make?
Metro TV is going to respond to that, but go ahead.
Okay. So are there any people that want to have any commissioners want to make any remonstrance?
Heather here. I would.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to echo the last speaker and appreciate him coming out, everybody coming out to speak today on a snowy day. It's hard for anybody to come in. But in specific to Mr. McFadden, I appreciate his comments. It is a pretty bad storm, and I've been working with the city of Oak Ridge on their declaration of emergency for some time now, and pulling services together and access up to that community. And it just takes all the work of our emergency services. They're doing excellent work in very, very treacherous conditions, and appreciate all their hard work as well.
Any other remonstrances?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden, thank you. You say the words that are on a lot of people's minds right now. While I was sitting in relative comfort under 12 inches of snow on my roof, there are people sitting in abject discomfort with the same amount of snow on their tent. And that's for those fortunate enough to have a tent. We are at a point where we can recognize what happened during this emergency event, and while there's little we can do to retroactively correct what happened, we can use it as a lesson for the future and determine how we can best avoid people being left in extremely vulnerable situations, not only during 12 inches of snow, but during 34 degrees and sleet coming in sideways. You know, it's unconscionable that we would have people suffering the way they suffered during this kind of weather. Fortunately, Mr. McFadden, fortunately, this wasn't 15 degrees. It was only 33 degrees. Still, it is absolutely unconscionable, once again, that we have people who are unable to seek a solid roof over their head during a situation such as the one that we're still experiencing at this point in time. Thank you for being here today. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the democratic process, just a little bit. I'm a member of, I live in House District 14, and I looked at the voters pamphlet, as we all do. You know, I look at the voters pamphlet. Not everybody does, but I did. And I turned to page 35 to see who was running for state representative from my district. And there was only one person, Julie Fahey. Found out that there was not actually only one person. The voters pamphlet only listed one person. So I'm trying to determine what the democratic process is there, where the voters pamphlet only has one person when two people were running for that office. I question that. So now I do know the answer, Mr. Mokrahayski. The answer to that is that the second candidate couldn't afford to go in the voters pamphlet. As a working person who couldn't afford to be in the voters pamphlet. That was Rich Cunningham, who's a Bethel School Board member, but didn't have the funds to pay, I believe it's $600 to get in the voters pamphlet. So we can't look at the voters pamphlet as an infallible method of providing information to people. It's only a tool. It's part of the arsenal of tools that people have at their disposal to determine who is running for office. House District 14, if you looked at the voters pamphlet, other than in the very front where it lists all candidates, on page 35, where you want to find out about the candidate, there's only one candidate you could find out about in the voters pamphlet. Now, House District 12 and 13 only had one candidate, so no problem. But in House District 14, it looked like House District 12 and 13. It looked like there was only one candidate, but there wasn't only one candidate. So that's just my response to that. And the democratic process, I'm fully in favor of that. And I think we'll probably have a little bit more of a discussion when Commissioner Berney brings the item back forward. But, you know, we'll talk more about that. Ms. McFadden, once again, thank you for being here this morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
May I
Are there any other commissioners that want to make a remonstrance?
I would like to, Joe Berney, if I might.
Please proceed.
First, I want to actually agree with everything that Commissioner Buck and Commissioner Farr stated, and we will, in fact, be bringing this up and talking about it later today. But while there are a couple of people in the audience, I would like to say this. Matt and Sean, how are you guys doing? Right or wrong, at the time we had the vote, something like 3 weeks ago and then again 2 weeks ago on this particular issue, I heard county workers loud and clear talk about the time frames, stresses, additional work required, etc., necessary, and got into the nuances of constructing a voter's pamphlet versus a voter's information guide. I want you to know I heard no testimony at all like the two of you gentlemen provided. If I had, much less all the emails and phone calls I've been subject to over the last few days, it would have changed my vote. but it did not happen. It could have happened. And so I have had a long conversation with the Democratic Party's chair about process. He agrees with me. And what's caused more of an issue unnecessarily here was the lack of paying attention. So input could have heard, and we wouldn't be in this position. I just want to share that with you. Even though you're aware, I'm going to be bringing this up, I'm sure, for a heated discussion and vote later in today's meeting. In other words, we all contribute. That's all.
Are there any other commissioners that want to make a remonstrance? Are there any other commissioners that want to make a remonstrance? Hearing none, we will move on to our emergency business. And I'll turn this over to Mr. Mokahysky to read the board order and also explain the board order for the emergency business.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, I'd like to just provide a brief update for the board on the weather event. So to set some context for you, I know that commissioners have been, whether present here in the community or in other places, you all on one level or another have been actively engaged and involved in different aspects of serving the community in your roles regarding this weather event. And I want to share with you that Lane County's Emergency Operations Center is up and running. I had an opportunity this morning to visit our EOC in the Sheriff's Office. We have our State of Oregon Emergency Management representative has joined us. Our new emergency manager, Patience Willingham Melcher, is there, along with our public information officers and public works and sheriff's staff, all doing diligent work. The focus is on prioritized issues, including Oak Ridge and other rural communities that are the most highly impacted by the snow. The county is actively engaged, as I mentioned, with the Oregon Emergency Management, and we have a liaison staffed within the EOC. The emergency declaration that you have in front of you that we'll be asking for support for will allow us to access even greater resources and assistance from the state. Our community partners are pulling together across Lane County to help provide assistance to residents and reopen access to rural communities. You will begin receiving regular updates from the Emergency Operations Center today. The first update came out, I believe, at 11 p.m. last night, and I shared that with commissioners, and you will now receive regular updates on that. So that will be your best source of updated information from our Emergency Operations Center. It's critical to follow the appropriate chain of command. So important to know that as we have these events, we all have a role to play. The board has a role to play. Our staff has a role to play. Our public safety and emergency management partners have roles to play, and we all need to make sure that we're playing that role effectively for us to be able to best meet the needs of the community, so that we can direct and request resources to meet the most immediate needs. All requests and communication with the state or other response agencies should come through the Emergency Operations Center. In addition to the Emergency Operations Center, our road maintenance crews are continuing to run 24-hour operations. We are still covered in snow on our Priority 2 and 3 roads, and some Priority 1 roads are still narrow but passable. We will focus our efforts on opening roads today with our focus on the remaining Level 1 roads, then shift to our secondary roads to expand access to our road system. We still have a lot of trees and power lines down, so it will be slow going, but I'm confident that we'll be able to make good progress today. We are partnering with Lane Electric in the Southeast Eugene area to start working on Willamette, Fox Hollow, and Macbeth to try and open roads and restore power. This will be an all-day effort, so fingers crossed as we can get into some properties back with power and access. The McKenzie Valley is still pretty isolated, but we are sending multiple crews that way this morning to start clearing those roads, likely to encounter lots of power issues and trees. And we hope to make some good progress for those residents. We also received an update from our road crew this morning, and just related to Oak Ridge, that we continue to work to reach out to ODOT to provide support with plows and tree cutters if needed to help open Highway 58, and we're working on getting a response back at this time. We have staff on both sides of the road that can assist if needed, Lane County staff on both sides of the road that can assist if needed, that will stay, and we will stay tuned as the day moves forward. We have road crews in all areas working on our roadways, including Veneta, Oak Ridge, Junction City, Cresswell, Dexter, Eugene, Springfield, and Cottage Grove. So I think that is everything on the situational update for you. Great opportunity as we move beyond this event for us to do some debriefing and plan for future trainings with the board and our leadership to make sure that, particularly as we have new commissioners and new emergency management staff on board, that we get really dialed in with our process and our communications in these events. But I've been pleased so far with the work that has happened by everyone. So I'll stop there, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Dingle if you have additional comments specifically about the board order that the board is being asked to take action on.
Thank you, Mr. Mokryski. Members of the board, you'll recall that this, we don't, and the new commissioners don't know this, but the experienced commissioners know that this board adopted some emergency procedures. I will say right off the bat that those are unnecessary because we're having this conversation in a regular meeting. You'll recall that a lot of that process was around how we would get the board together and how we would notice an emergency meeting. Those don't apply. But this board order is pursuant to Lane Code Chapter 20.010. This meets, this meets the definition of a natural disaster. It contains the term of the declaration, which is 14 days, and it also has the necessary elements in it to meet the requirements for mutual, or to get the aid from the state, in that it says all local resources are being expended or insufficient to respond to the situation. And finally, as pursuant to Lane Code Chapter 20, it provides spending authority to Mr. Mokryski in excess of his $100,000 authority that he typically has. That's all I have, unless the board has a specific question.
A procedure question, if I may. Mr. Chair, you're going to continue to run the meeting in absence and by voice, in which case I will do my best to keep the meeting in order from this side. I'm the only person here. So
okay.
I'll just wait for your cue, and I have an eye on Metro TV up above. I'll see if they need any special instructions given to you. Okay,
great. So at this time, I'm going to read the board order. It is Order 1902, 26-06 in the matter of declaring a local emergency as a result of the February 25, 2019 snowstorm. At this time, I'll ask if there are any commissioners that wish to make any comments, or if there is a motion to approve the order.
So moved.
Second.
So it's moved by Commissioner Buck, seconded by Commissioner Burney. Are there further comments on the motion as made?
Chair Sorensen. Commissioner Bozievich here.
I heard Commissioner Bozievich, so please go forward.
I want to ask Steve if this is going to also be followed up with the accounting and application to FEMA for reimbursement from the federal government on the emergency.
Yeah, this is Steve Dingle. Yes.
Good. Okay. That's all. I just want to make sure that process was starting, because one of the issues in getting reimbursement is if they don't start the accounting now, it's really hard to do it retroactively.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Farb, please proceed.
Thank you. For the purpose of those who may be watching this, we're voting on Order 1902-26-06. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments by commissioners before we go to a vote? Seeing none, let's go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. The motion is carried unanimously, 5-0. All commissioners voting in favor of the order as presented.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Procedure instruction. I've been notified that Metro TV can operate without the sound of a gavel, so you are clear to continue.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to go back to the adjustments to the agenda for a moment. We have the report by Travel Lane County coming up at 10 a.m. time certain. We'll ask them to abbreviate their report because we want to make sure that Commissioner Bozovich is available for the major vote on the general obligation bond referral and related a topic that was brought up by Commissioner Burney this morning. We're also rolling item 7B, which is the fatal crash investigation team report. I don't believe I mentioned that in the earlier adjustments to the agenda, but I want to reassure Ms. Jones that that I had not forgotten that, and that we'll take that up most likely on March 13 in the other matter. We may also delay our item 7C depending on who is available later today. That involves Mr. Dingle, primarily 7C.
Chair Sorensen, if I may.
Yes, sir. Yes.
This is Steve Dingle, County Counsel. I was contacted by Mr. Fox, and he is going to be unable to be here, and I think he plays a key part in that presentation, so I would suggest that that item be moved as well.
Okay, so we will either roll that to March 13 or otherwise have the agenda team schedule it, and it won't be held today. So if you could inform Mr. Fox, that'd be great. So
I will do that in Mr. Coles.
okay, very good. So I think at this point we are now ready to move to item 5, which is the consent calendar. And as I mentioned, I'm taking off item 5A2, which is the proposed letter, and that'll be taken up probably on March 13. And at this point, I'll ask, are there any commissioners that want any other adjustments to the item 5, the consent calendar? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar without item 5A2.
Bozovich, so moved.
Second.
Who seconded?
Burney.
So it's moved by Commissioner Bozovich, second by Commissioner Burney, to approve the consent calendar without item 5A2. We'll now go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. The consent calendar is approved. And running slightly ahead of the agenda, I think I'd like to start in on item 6B. We'll cut that at 10 o'clock, and then we'll go to Commissioner Burney's related item. So let's go with item 6B, public comment and order on order 19-01-29-03 in the matter of referring a general obligation bond to the voters of Lane County to construct a new county courthouse, improve safety, accessibility, efficiency, and service. Mr. Steve Mokrahysky, Lane County Administrator, will present this item, and if there is anyone there for public comment, I'll ask Commissioner Farr to report on that.
I will comply.
So, Steve, go ahead and describe the measure and then briefly, and then we'll see if there's any public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in front of you, you have a report from staff, Exhibit A, which is the proposed ballot language that would be referred to the Secretary of State's office for review, and ultimately to the voters of Lane County for the May 21st, 2019 election regarding a 20-year bond measure to fund, for local bond funds to fund the local portion of a new Lane County courthouse and justice center. The new so the language has previously been presented to you, and the board has received public comment on this. You'll ask for public comment again today. There has been one substantive change, and that is in the dollar amount requested from voters. In the previous version of this language, the local amount had been proposed at $158 million. That number has been reduced in the updated ballot language and ballot request by $4 million to a total of $154 million request. The balance of the language and the request and information is the same, but I want to just walk through what has changed there. As we shared with the board throughout this process, we continued to look at ways to bring that number down. There's been a significant desire among the board and our team in Lane County to make sure that we are asking only what is necessary of our local taxpayers to complete this project. We've committed that we've shared with you through significant analysis and scoping work, a total project cost of $252 million for this project. That has been a very open, transparent, and high-end, all-in cost. We've said the total project cost will not exceed $252 million. That includes land acquisition and planning and design, furnishings and equipment and construction, contingencies, everything, $252 million. The $94 million estimate from the state of Oregon is what we stand to receive. We've already received $6.4 million or been approved for $6.4 million from the state, and the governor's budget and the chief justice's budget identifies an additional $87.6 million, which totals the state funding that Lane County is eligible for at $94 million. In addition, what we've done over the past several weeks is identify one-time federal forest funding receipts that Lane County has received over the course of the past year that were unanticipated and deemed as one-time resources. Those have totaled $4 million, and so we are recommending to the board that we put that $4 million in federal forest funds towards the reduction of the local request. So the total project cost has not changed, $252 million. What is changing is the request of our local taxpayers. So again, we're anticipating approximately $94 million from the state of Oregon for this project, $4 million from federal forest payments, and not to exceed $154 million from our local taxpayers. To break that down briefly for you, the $154 million bond, not to exceed bond, would occur over a 20-year period of time and would have an estimated impact of 27 cents per thousand of assessed value for Lane County property taxpayers. The average impact to a median assessed value home would be approximately a $50 increase per year. So that is 27 cents, approximately $50 increase per year for the median assessed value in Lane County. That is a reduction from previously, again, the $158 million, which was 29 cents and approximately $54. And I will just make a note that when we did polling on this project in late November and early December, we asked voters, registered voters in Lane County, if they would support a $164 million bond measure. So when we did the polling data, we actually asked 164 million was approximately 31 cents, I believe, per thousand, and an approximate impact of $58 per thousand. So 164, 31 cents, $58. And then after we received that information and we did additional refinement of the budget, we brought forward to the board 158 million, and then we did our additional work to identify $4 million in federal funds. So I just wanted to share that the results that we provided from the polling data were based on a higher number. Whether or not that there's a correlation between the reduction and voter sentiment, we don't know. But I just wanted to share that as one point of clarification. I think the last thing that I'd like to add, and I know there's an additional discussion that's been requested regarding voter pamphlet versus voter information guide. The board has previously unanimously approved a community benefits agreement, which is a policy statement about how you want this project to be implemented and the resources to be spent on local labor, on livable prevailing wages, benefits, apprenticeship programs, energy efficiency and renewable energy, local businesses, local workers. So you've already made that statement. You've already approved a local law that says that Lane County cannot collect the local resources, the local bond, unless the state approves its state portion. So you've already approved that unanimously, and that is local law. And finally, and you've also, in this ballot language, it includes an independent requirement for an independent financial audit of the bond expenditures. I wanted to additionally share with the board that we have had the discussion. We will be coming back to the board with future discussions if you move forward with this ballot language to pursue an independent cost controls function whereby Lane County would contract with a third-party auditing firm. In addition to the independent financial audit, we would do independent cost controls throughout the project. This independent cost control auditor that we would contract with for a third party to provide this service would actually audit the ongoing billing from contractors and subcontractors to make sure that Lane County is only executing payments from taxpayers that are absolutely the accurate payment for services that have been rendered. So this adds another level of financial stewardship of taxpayer resources and ensuring strict accountability to taxpayers, an effort to try to make sure that promises made become promises kept, and that we have a transparent way that we can account for that to the Board of Commissioners and to the public. So we want to make sure that every dollar is spent exactly how it should be spent and how our local taxpayers and voters intend it to be spent. I'll stop there, ask if Mr. Cheney has any additional comments, and then we have Mr. Rickoff and Mr. Kincaid in the audience as well to answer questions regarding the the ballot language process and additional voter information or pamphlet guides.
Mr. Mokrahysky, is there anyone there who wants to make public comment on this?
It looks like
do we have anyone signed up for public comment? I see no one signed up. If anyone wishes to speak, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and I'll once again give 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Mike McFadden. I reside in Eugene, and I sort of have some general thoughts about this topic that I'd like to share, and I hope they're helpful maybe going forward in thinking about this. But I mean, at least for me, and I'm a pretty proactive person who seeks out news and information, I haven't seen any renderings or actual designs presented to the public of the building that's we're talking about building here. So first thing I'd like to say is I think it would be really helpful in getting an affirmative response from the public, that you have some kind of material thing to show to people saying this is what your dollars are buying, not this concept that's out there and very well put together and all, but actually something to see, to look at. And then along with that thought, I think that generally, maybe not tax averse being the right way to put it, but I think that a lot of the public are, they've maybe felt burned a bit in the past. They really want to see modesty in public spending. So they would want to see, I think a majority of people would want to see something built that represented the ideal of like modesty and restraint in spending and only using the amount of money needed to build what's absolutely necessary. Even if we're projecting out that we want to leave, space to expand in an expanding community. But I think that public wants really to see the best use of the resources and not necessarily like a big, nice-looking monument to somebody's concept of a justice center. And then going along with that, I think that the public really would want to see an increase in sheriff's patrols, especially in rural areas. I think that we really do need to have more law enforcement in the unincorporated areas of the county, patrolling and providing services. And, the district attorney's office as well, needing, better staffing for prosecutors and victims services and stuff like that. So I think that if we were able to tie in those ideas to the idea of building a justice center, you'd get more public buy-in. And then one last thought is to remember that a lot of Lane County voters are also Eugene City residents. Not everyone, of course, but it is an important thing to note. And that due to the political body, the Eugene City Council, and how they've conducted their business regarding the City Hall, I think that a lot of people really are apprehensive about committing to things without solid plans, solid routes laid forward to a clear objective that makes sense and is modest with public funds. So I think that those things all need to be taken into account if you really want to get an affirmative response from the voters in asking for this money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McFadden. Is anyone else in the audience wish to address the full Board of County Commissioners? I see none, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Commissioners, we have about 12 minutes until our time certain. Do the Commissioners want to have further briefing on this, or do you want to move to a motion? And I'll call on Commissioner Bozovich first to give your perspective on it.
I think we can move forward to a motion at this point and get this taken care of before 10 o'clock.
Okay, I'll call on you to make a motion if you wish.
And I'm just trying to get back to make sure I get the right order number.
1901-2903.
Yep, thank you. I'd like to move approval of Board Order 1901-2903 in the matter of referring a general obligation bond to the voters of Lane County to construct a new county courthouse to improve safety, accessibility, efficiency, and service.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Bozovich and seconded by Commissioner Burney to approve the order as presented in our agenda. Further comments from commissioners, please identify yourself if you'd like to make a comment. So hearing no further comment, I'll just say that I think this is rather historic. I know this comes at a moment in time when 4 of our 5 county commissioners are not in Harris Hall, but that doesn't change the months of work that has gone into this.
I'm smiling for all 5, Mr. Chair.
Very good. And this has been a tremendous effort, and we really appreciate all the work of Mr. Mokohiski, Mr. Dingle, his team, both of you guys, as well as our communications and work with the circuit court and the sheriff and many other people involved in getting us to this point. So at this time, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The motion is adopted on a 5-0 vote. all commissioners present and voting in the affirmative. Thank you. And let's just start on this voter pamphlet item. I am looking
Commissioner Sorensen, this is Commissioner Bozevich. Can I ask one quick question for Mr. Mokrzycki about some of the financing that
Yes.
brought the $4 million in? So
Yes.
the one thing I didn't hear asked that was remarked on in there was the Comcast settlement funds, because at one time we talked about maybe using that. Will we be looking at those Comcast settlement funds maybe to do another housing improvement program like we did in the last budget cycle? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Bozevich, thanks for that question. That is actually an open request of the board for report back on the Comcast settlement payment to Lane County and the use of those resources. I'm anticipating that in the county administrator's proposed budget to the budget committee and the board in late April, early May, that we will have a proposal, a recommended proposal for how to use those resources. And that is what we're eyeing, is looking at additional investments that help implement the shelter feasibility study that was done by the Technical Assistance Collaborative, our roadmap to eliminate homelessness in Lane County. So that is our plan, is to look at using those resources for permanent supportive housing and other needs, housing and homelessness related needs. So more to come on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can just break in really briefly, I had a chance to ask Carrie Westland from Traveling County. She and her team are here to present, but they understand the significance of this item the board is dealing with, so they are ready to present, but they're also fine waiting a little past 10 o'clock so that the board can resolve the matters related to this ballot measure.
And if I may, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Burney.
And Steve, I just want to state, at least speaking only for myself, that I have no trouble being respectful of Lane County Travels and listening to the presentation and then coming back, because I see these as related but separate.
Okay. I know that Carrie and her team are more than happy to make this presentation either now or in a while. So I think the best thing to do, given our quorum issues, is to move to the other business that Commissioner Burney brought up, and I'll just turn it over to Commissioner Burney to introduce the item.
Okay. I am sorry to have to bring this item up, but I am. Ultimately, I have to agree with the subject of the numerous emails and phone calls I received over the last few days pleading for a voter's information pamphlet instead of a voter's information guide. I did not recognize the significance of this as an issue for voters. I do now. I'm very frustrated with the process. Testimony could have and here's a couple of reasons why, because it puts us in an awkward position, and I hate introducing it. I believe testimony could have very easily occurred weeks ago from the folks that were pleading the case the last few days. I believe that part of what democracy requires is an enlightened electorate, and apparently no one was paying attention. So I adamantly request inclusion on all future issues from people that have opinions that they weigh in before, not after the fact, as has occurred this time. I proudly cast my vote twice with Commissioner Bozevich, the only guy that did, because I saw this, correctly or not, as a workers' rights issue. I was informed of the enormous additional time and stress and effort that a voter's information pamphlet versus voter information guide would require of election staff given the late date. It was explained to me, for example, that more staff would be needed. Technically trained elections people would have a huge lift for Cheryl and her team. that there could potentially be the risk of errors reviewing different ballot styles under time constraints, and that we may, in fact, not have given adequate time to districts that have elections, and they're going to have to resubmit. So I want this Board of Commissioners to know that I've spent a lot of hours with Mr. Mokrahysky late this last week and over the weekend. His dedication to me is amazing. He has been working with his staff over the weekend because he knows and again, over the weekend, he knows I'm absolutely concerned about the impact on county workers, especially election staff. I also want to acknowledge and pay my respects to Commissioner Farr, because I agree with the points that he made when he asked for reconsideration of this issue a couple of weeks ago. He's right. That was my thinking. And I'm going to presume, I don't like doing this, but I'm going to presume that Commissioner Farr shares a level of frustration with my asking for reconsideration. As I am frustrated, no doubt my fellow commissioners Bozovich and Buck probably share as well. Nonetheless, Mr. Mokrahysky has shared with me that a voter's pamphlet, while requiring great effort, is doable and able to be accomplished for this special election cycle. This is the result of nothing short of heroic dedication of Cheryl and her workers at elections over this issue that I brought up because of this lobbying, if you would. So I am asking the Board of Commissioners for reconsideration of the issue of providing a voter's information pamphlet for this special election in May.
Okay, so I'll interpret that as a motion to reconsider.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, may I say one more thing?
Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
Okay, I also publicly, and forgive me, Mr. Chair, because I respect and voted for you as chair, but it would have been so much easier for me to make the right decision if the chair had been willing to talk with me beforehand as requested, just so I could have gotten his perspective regarding why in some cases the county has put out nothing for special elections, why in other cases the county has put out voter information brochures, and why in yet other times the county has put out voter information pamphlets, because that also could have changed my vote, and I just need that perspective on this commission. I'm through.
So I'm going to interpret all that as a motion for reconsideration on the issue of whether we're doing a voter pamphlet or whether we're doing a voter guide. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is there a second to reconsider this issue?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Burney and seconded by Commissioner Buck to reconsider our previous vote and previous discussion on the topic of whether we're going to have a voter pamphlet or a voter guide. Further discussion on this motion, and commissioners, please identify if you want to be recognized on this vote, on this discussion.
I have some questions. This is Farr.
Okay,
I have
go ahead.
questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. And Commissioner Burney, thank you for bringing this back up. I too received a lot of emails, but most of them seem to be a cut and paste email that I received, so I didn't get a lot of different questions. But Mr. Moker, a question for you. One statement is that you had said that the voter pamphlet would cost $8,000 and the brochure would cost $30,000. Are those accurate numbers?
I'm just reviewing. Just a moment, Mr. Chair. The actual, I'm not sure where that, I believe we did present that to the board. The total cost in 2015 for a voter's pamphlet was $25,671.28. Lane County's share of the voter pamphlet in 2015 was $8,195.92. In 2017, we did a voter information brochure. The cost of the voter information brochure was $30,690.11. So the reason that the voters pamphlet, they cost about the same to produce, the bulk of the cost is in mailing to all registered voters. So anytime you're mailing something to all registered voters, that's where a lot of the cost is wrapped up in. The reason that the voters pamphlet costs less is because, at least in 2015, we shared the cost with each of the districts. So Lane County paid a smaller amount for the voters pamphlet because the other districts shared in that cost. When we do a voter information guide, Lane County would bear the entire cost of that. And I know Mr. Cheney had an additional comment.
And I'm going to have a number of questions, so go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I believe in the motion to reconsider that the motion must be made by a party that voted for the original motion that's being reconsidered, and I believe the second also has to be.
Well, the vote ultimately was 5-0 to go ahead with the voter guide, because Commissioner Buck and I, who had voted previously for the voters pamphlet, on the final vote we voted to go along with the guide. So I believe it's appropriate for both commissioner, for any commissioner to make the motion and any commissioner to second the motion.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, I said an error. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So I'll continue if I may. So this quote then, Mr. Mokrajski, is accurate. So about, and this is a quote by Commissioner Sorensen that has been forwarded to me, so I've not verified that this is an actual quote. Sorensen said, so about $8,000 cost to the county for the voter pamphlet, about $30,000 paid entirely by the county for a voter information brochure. And your response to that was right. So I'm presuming those are accurate numbers and accurate statements.
And we presented that to the board in a public meeting, all of that information.
Okay. Now, this does not take into account staff costs.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Then a question, if we do reconsider this vote and ultimately go to a revote on the voters pamphlet, what about staff costs? You know, that was a presentation that I received, and Ms. Betchart was not present for the first vote because of jury duty, but did provide a little bit of testimony on the second vote. Could you talk about what the staff overhead would be for preparing a voters pamphlet, and how which staff would do it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Farr, and I'm looking at Greg Rickoff on the other end of the table here, and I'd like Greg to maybe provide a little more detailed information for you on the potential impacts to staff for a voter pamphlet versus a voter information guide.
Chair Sorensen, Commissioners, Greg Rickoff, Director of Operations. We don't have those numbers for you yet. What we do know is that the 3 individuals who have the ability to proof the 250 plus ballot styles would be the ones that would be required to do this work. We're currently looking into the opportunity to bring in experts from other counties that do not have a May ballot or do not have as a complex a May ballot. And we do that through a mutual aid agreement. We don't know what that would cost us yet.
Okay, so we're kind of shooting in the dark as far as what the staff cost, the staff overhead is concerned. Okay,
Yes, sir.
Don't like shooting in the dark, but sometimes we have to. Now, you said 250 different ballot styles or so, is that correct?
Yes,
Now,
sir.
not all of those will be in question for a voters pamphlet, though, is that correct? It's just the ones that may happen to have an item on the May ballot.
That is correct. The ballot styles is different from the voter's pamphlet in terms of the content that's available. For the most part, anybody who has a measure on the May ballot would be required to put together an explanatory statement. So the other agencies that are considering that will be required to put something in the voter's pamphlet. But it would be tough to tell exactly what the voters pamphlet would include.
So as far as the cost of the county, the voters pamphlet itself would cost less to produce, or no, would cost probably, around $25,000 since we're mailing to every household, compared to about $30,000 for a voters information guide, presuming we pay the entire cost of the voters pamphlet.
Yes, sir.
When we paid $8,000, we were only paying a part of the cost. The burden was shared for that
Correct.
particular.
There's a state formula, a required state formula to spread out the cost of the voter's pamphlet across all agencies that have any item on the ballot. So our Public Partners would be picking up the tab for
We
their
would be
proportion.
asking the Florence School, Siuslaw School District, for instance, if they had people on there who were, if they had well, I'm sure they have people running, but, so they'd be paying part of it too.
Correct.
So each of the jurisdictions in Lane County would be paying part of the cost of the voters pamphlet, not just the county.
That is correct.
And it would be someplace around $25,000 distributed evenly or distributed by weight.
It's by weight. That's exactly it.
Okay.
With for Lane Community College or Lane ESD, that does comprise the entire district, their costs would be considerably higher than, say, a fire district or a smaller school district.
Would Lane Community College, for instance, since it does comprise the entire district, as does Lane County, would they pay an equal amount on the voters pamphlet to Lane County since the distribution is equal?
That would be conjecture. I'd
Okay.
want to consult. It would not be conjecture. I'm sure Cheryl Betchart would have a sense of what that cost would be and what the proportion would be, but I'm
So
sorry.
we'll be voting on this should it go forward without all of the information that we need. Now, we do know that in 2015, the county produced a voters pamphlet and we paid about $8,000. 2017, we didn't have a voters pamphlet.
Correct.
2015, we didn't. 2013, I looked, I couldn't find one. 2011, we didn't have one. 2009, we didn't have one. 2007, 2005, and I only went back as far as 2003, and I didn't see any other voters pamphlets other than 2015. Okay, so it would be not normal then, based on those numbers, to have a voters pamphlet. It would be, while it does inform voters, and we're all in favor of that, I'm adamantly in favor of it, it's not something that we typically do. And in fact, this century, as far as I can see, now somebody email me if they find something different, but this century we've only done it one time before.
To the best of my knowledge, that's
Okay,
accurate.
that's based on research that I did. My research is not flawless by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm going to continue a little bit regarding some of the other questions in place, that the voters pamphlet is a place where people can go to find out about their pamphlet, about their candidates. I'm going to go back to a statement that I made earlier. I looked at the 2018 voters pamphlet, and I'm in House District 14. And I looked at the House districts. House District 12 was John Lively running unopposed. House District 13 was Nancy Nathanson running unopposed. House District 14 was Julie Fahey running unopposed. No, actually, Julie Fahey wasn't, but she was the only one listed in the voters pamphlet. Mr. Moker, anybody here, can you tell me why only one candidate, not only one candidate was in that election, were on the votes, but were in the voters pamphlet? You know, that's a rhetorical question, because the other candidate couldn't afford it. Now, I'm looking at the results of that election, and the other candidate who ran against Ms. Fahey got 10,000 votes. So 10,000 people who did not see that candidate in the voters pamphlet did, in fact, vote for that candidate. Now, I'm looking at another race, which was the one for, for House District. I don't have the House District number. Yeah, I do. It's the one which had Marty Wilde against Mark Herbert. Mark Herbert was in the voters pamphlet, and that is State Representative 11th District. Mark Herbert was in the voters pamphlet. Face picture statement against Marty Wilde. Mark Herbert gained 8,600 votes with the name in the voters pamphlet. And Rich Cunningham gained 10,000 votes with no name in the voters pamphlet. So declaring that the voters pamphlet is a way for people to find out about their candidates, I present facts that that's not the only way, not the best way necessarily for people. Maybe it is the best way, I don't know, for certain people to find out about their candidate, but that's not an infallible way to find out about your candidate, because if you live in House District 14, Bethel, Junction City, Cheshire, parts of Northwest Eugene, you wouldn't have found out about two candidates from the voters pamphlet. You'd only have found out about one. And there were two. Somehow, 10,000 plus people found out about that other candidate. So those are just questions that I have as we move forward with the discussion regarding why should we have a voters pamphlet. We've had one so far this century. This will be the second. And yes, it does get a great deal of information of the people in, for instance, the Siuslaw School District. If anyone chooses to put their name in the voters pamphlet, I believe there's a cost involved. But then, you know, so we're moving forward with a decision based upon assigning staff, which we do all the time. We assign staff all the time, work that's not on their workload. So we're making this decision based on those facts and based on the fact that really this is not an infallible method of voters getting information about their candidate. Okay, I'm going to think about this a little bit more. We have a vote. The motion on the table, I believe, is a vote to reconsider. Thank you.
Is there any further comment from commissioners on whether we should reconsider or not reconsider our previous votes? Are there any further comments? If not, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of reconsidering, vote aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to reconsidering, vote no. The vote is 5-0. As I count it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, all 5 commissioners voting to reconsider the issue. And now we'll move to whether there's a motion to have a voter's pamphlet in place of a voter guide. Is there a motion to do that?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Burney, seconded by Commissioner Buck, to direct staff to have a voter's pamphlet for the spring election. And further discussion, I'll call on the maker of the motion first, and then we'll move down from that. So, Commissioner Burney?
I think I have spoken my piece. I think this board knows my sense of the good, the bad, the ugly, and why I'm making this motion at this time.
Okay. Any further comments on the motion? Any further questions from staff?
I have questions on the motion.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. I'm still I'm still deciding how to vote on this motion. I voted yes on the motion to reconsider. So I need a little bit of help from my fellow commissioners. We don't talk away from the table too frequently. So the motion is to use a voter's pamphlet instead of voter's information guide. Initially, when the motion came up, I was in favor of the voter's information guide, and that was a 3-2 vote, I was in favor of the voter's pamphlet, which was a 3-2 vote in favor of the voter's pamphlet. With further discussion with a number of different people, I made the motion to reconsider at the subsequent meeting, the very next meeting, to reconsider, in which case, at which time I voted in favor of a voter's guide, the voter's information pamphlet instead of a voter's guide, voter's pamphlet, excuse me.
No, you voted for a voter's
information guide instead of voter's
brochure along with Jay and I, yes.
Thank you. So I've voted both ways on this, haven't I? You know, boy, which way is the wind blowing today? I'm kidding about that. I'm taking further information in order to make it a good decision regarding this. So if the decision is based upon candidates, people being able to see their candidate in a particular election, I think I've already dispelled that as being an accurate way of, not being an accurate way of finding out which candidate is in the election, because in the 2018 voter's pamphlet, excuse me, not all candidates were in there. In fact, the representative from my district running against the incumbent was not in there. So that's not the way to find out about your candidate. So I'd like to hear from the people who may be inclined to vote yes on this. Convince me, why should I vote yes on this? I'd like to hear about why you are voting yes, please.
Do any commissioners want to be recognized?
Buck here. I can.
Go ahead, Commissioner Buck.
I'll just say a few words. I've stated in the past my reasons for having a voter's pamphlet. I do think Commissioner Farr brings up a good point on both pamphlet and a guide. Sounds like that's where we're at with this motion on the table. And if we still want to do both, or if we're just doing one, that's a point of clarification I think we should discuss. When it comes to supporting a voter's pamphlet, I believe that just because we haven't done it in the past doesn't mean we shouldn't do it now or in the future. it's very important that our public has information on who they vote for, and in favor of that, as I've stated in prior meetings. So I just wanted to share that and see if we can get some clarification, as Commissioner Barr had mentioned, on both the guide and the pamphlet.
Since that's a response to my question, I'll say thank you, Commissioner Buck.
Okay, do any commissioners want to be recognized, or do you want Commissioner Buck to have staff respond to your question?
I hear no other commissioners wishing to be recognized, so I'm just working on my past notes as to what commissioners may have said about this.
Sorry, this is Commissioner Bozovich.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Commissioner Bozovich.
I'll make a brief statement about this issue. I voted the same way twice and was the one that probably convinced Commissioner Burney to follow along with me in my discussion of this. I can say I'm still greatly concerned about the load this places on staff to go to a voter's pamphlet for something that, really, the state really should be taking up the responsibility of putting out voters' pamphlets anyway, and the lack of funding that has come along with motor voter and other issues is one of the reasons why we're so short-staffed. So when it gets down to this again, I'm going to vote the same way, and I'm probably going to vote against this motion, but I know that I'm going to lose this motion. I understand that Mr. Mokreheiski and Ms. Betchart are going to do their best to bring in some outside staff and make sure that we're not going to put at risk the accuracy of our election, which is my primary concern, is running a fair and accurate election, not whether I publicize some school board's candidacy for his position or not.
Hey, thank you. I just want to make a few comments on this motion. I think that the issue of whether the state is providing us enough money for things that we are allowed to do is always an issue with county government. It is always an issue when we have put duties on our sheriff or our assessor or elections people or anyone else who are trying to do what the state law allows us to do, but the funding for those activities is always a matter of the legislature, whether or not they're going to provide funding for these things. I'll just say that the state of Oregon allows the state to put out a voter's pamphlet, and it allows counties to put out a county voter pamphlet. And it is correct that we have not done county voter pamphlets very often, but in my view, county voter pamphlets serve an important purpose in providing not education to the public, but the opportunity for education. Candidates, districts, including our own Lane County government, candidates and districts, if they want to put stuff in the county voters pamphlet, they have to observe the law, the state law, which our staff will be following. And if candidates don't want to put statements in, or they can't afford it under the current rules, then they're not going to put it in. Some districts may not want to put things in the county voters pamphlet. But the role of our county government is not simply to do the things that we've previously done without questioning it. In this instance, we have a major public works project and a public voters pamphlet, where opponents and proponents can, if they can't afford to put their statement in, or candidates for public office throughout the county, if they can afford to and comply with the rules to put their statements in, then the voters have an opportunity to be further educated. I'm not persuaded that the amount of work that would be necessary to put together a voter guide strictly and solely on the issue of the county courthouse is the reason, because that costs with staff time and the additional cost of $30,000 that the county would have to bear. I'm not really convinced that there's that big of a labor cost on the other end. And I think that we as a county need to assert the fact that counties have an opportunity, if they wish, to have voters' pamphlets. And I think it's, as Commissioner Bozievich said, he has been very consistent on his view. I think I've also been consistent on my view that a voters' pamphlet is in the public interest, and it's something that we should be doing this year for this election. So those are my comments. Are there any other comments by commissioners before we go to a vote?
Yes.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you. Very convincing points that you make, Commissioner Sorensen, and I'm still not quite decided how I'm going to vote on this at this point in time. And bear in mind that I have changed my vote on this. I voted both ways on this, and as more information comes available, I use that in my reconsideration. I hope that every single action that we take for the future doesn't take 2 or 3 shots at it before we get it right.
I concur, sir.
But that, that being said, something that you said, Commissioner Sorensen, has me worried because based on an email that I received, and this is an email that I really poured over at length because it was from somebody I knew and trusted. The email states that support working folks' access to our democratic system. So the voters pamphlet is supporting working folks' access. My question is regarding something that you said, Commissioner Sorensen, affordability. It's access to only people who can afford to be in the voters pamphlet. So therefore, people who don't have the benefit of being able to afford being in the voters pamphlet don't get that same kind of access. You have to be able to afford it. That doesn't seem particularly positive to the working, the working folks' access to me. So that's a part of my consideration is, are we doing this for a very disingenuous reason, or is there a real reason to have a voters pamphlet as opposed to a voter's guide? So the second question is, in 2 years, 2021, we're going to presume there'll be a mid-year or a off-season election, school boards, whatever it may be in Lane County, and we may not have anything on the ballot. Are we going to have a discussion about putting out a voters pamphlet even if we don't have something on the ballot, and other jurisdictions in Lane County do? That's a rhetorical question because I don't think anybody can answer it at this point in time, and the answer is not very obvious. So I'm going to think a little bit before I vote on this, but if I do vote on it, it's not because I'm vacillating in my decision. It's because I'm weighing more information before I cast what I hope is a final vote on this particular issue. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair?
Okay, are there any other commissioners that wish to be recognized before we take a vote? Who spoke up there?
Joe Burney.
Okay, Commissioner Burney, you're recognized.
I want to share with Commissioner Farr the fact that sometimes an openness to weighing new information causes what seems like indecision. I assure everyone it's much more painful to go through this than to be absolutely firm on opinion. This has been torturous for me, and I don't think it should be. I think this also points, as I've tried to say before, to a very flawed process. Interest groups absolutely need to pay attention to our agenda and testify their input prior to that first vote. So I hope, if anything, we learn that. And finally, I want to concur with Commissioner Bozievich. He did take the time and walk me through. I then did further research in terms of the impact on staff and the need for accuracy in this process. That has not changed. So I just want to say that that's my 2 cents. Ultimately, I agree with Commissioner Farr. I think at a point in the future, perhaps this board should discuss a policy so we don't get in this position again. But for right now, I guess the motion's on the table.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple more questions. Just one statement to the staff of Trevor Lane County. And
Go ahead, Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. to the staff of Travel County and to any of my fellow board members from Travel County who may be here, I apologize for this going on. But it's important that we have this debate. And one last thing I'm going to say then, before I ask a question. When I was going through officer candidate school, I was an acting platoon leader, and somebody's car was parked in the wrong place, and an attack officer said, "Farr, can your platoon carry that car out of here?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, go ahead and do it." And I looked, and I realized that my platoon darned well could not carry that car out of there. So I said, "Sir, upon reevaluation of the situation, I have changed my mind. My platoon cannot carry that car out of here." The attack officer accepted my reevaluation of the situation. So at this point in time, Commissioner Berney, you have reevaluated the situation and changed your mind, and I'm in the process of considering a reevaluation. But I do have a question. Committee deadlines for the pamphlet. When do we have deadlines that we can get out to the people who need to supply the information with the pamphlet?
Thank you, Commissioner Farr. So the deadlines are March 1st for the ballot language. So you've already approved the ballot language. That'll go to the Secretary of State's office to the clerk for review. March 21st by noon is the day that the explanatory statements are due. And then March 25th is the final date at noon on March 25th is the final date for measure arguments to be filed with the county clerk. So what the board needs to do is appoint the committee that will write the explanatory statement. It's a 3 to 5 member committee, 1 for, 1 against, 1 neutral. The board does not need to approve the explanatory statement itself. So the action the board needs to take is to appoint the committee. Our plan would be to bring that back for you to approve the committee on March 12th. And then it gives approximately a little over a week for the committee to meet, draft the explanatory statement, and submit that.
Thank you, Mr. Mokrice, and I trust that you feel that we can meet those deadlines.
The deadlines are tight. This is, I think, as Commissioner Berney indicated, an impact on staff, but our staff is out. Cheryl and her elections team are phenomenal. We will get the work done. Yes, I think there's an opportunity in the future to make sure we try to do this sooner, but we can accomplish the task at hand if the board directs so.
And one last question. Do we know if we are issuing similar deadlines to other jurisdictions based upon what they may be placing on the ballot?
Yes, and Mr. Rickoff, you want to?
Chair Sorensen, Commissioner Farr, yes, we are. We would be asking Fern Ridge, who has already submitted their materials they would need to go back and develop an explanatory statement. That was not a requirement early on, but it would be now. Both 4J and Crow, Applegate, Lorraine are considering elements. They have not submitted their materials yet. We would talk to all 3 agencies to let them know that they now have explanatory statement required of them, and would work with them to make sure that they meet the statutory timelines.
And without beating this to death, what are the ramifications if they do not meet the deadlines?
That is a great question that I do not have the answer to.
Once again, we are shooting in the dark a little bit, and we're also putting what may be onerous burdens on other jurisdictions. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just wanted it, there was a comment, or Commissioner Buck had a question regarding a little bit of confusion. Are we doing a voters pamphlet, information guide, or both? And I know you have a motion on the floor to deal with the voters pamphlet. The short answer is we can do both if the board directs. The voters pamphlet is the more staff intensive for the elections team. An information guide is less staff intensive for elections, requires more different type of staff in different parts of the organization. The cost of the voters pamphlet, if we share it with the other districts, is going to be less for the county. So, we could appropriate that to do the information guide. So it's really, we can accomplish both. It will not place an additional burden on the same staff, just different staff to do the work. We're going to do the information guide anyways. So we'll leave that to the board for direction. If you want to make sure that the voters have the best information and the most robust information to make a decision, we certainly can do both if that's the will of the board.
Thank you for that response, Ms. Mokoraski. And I will say this, if I vote yes on this, it is with apologies to staff for extra burden that's being placed on them. Because since this board started convening this year, staff has had a lot of extra burden placed on them due to the excessive length of, not excessive, but the long length of board meetings. And extra requirements have been placed on staff to both be in attendance at board meetings and to respond to questions that are coming at a really higher than normal rate from the board. So my apologies to staff if I vote yes on this, because I'm doing it with thinking of you a great deal, understanding that may require time away from home, it may require time on the job that you would not otherwise have spent on the job, or it may require you not doing other things that are really actually a part of your job description. Thank you.
Okay, do any other commissioners want to be recognized before we go to a vote? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote on the motion to direct staff to have a voter's pamphlet. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say no.
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 Could the commissioners that vote no identify themselves?
Bozovich.
Sorry, that was for yay.
Far.
Okay,
Let's do
Commissioner
the same for
Farr,
the commissioners who voted yes.
Okay, first we typically announce the people who vote no. So who are the commissioners that are voting no?
Bozovich.
And Farr. Okay, the motion carries 3-2 with Commissioners Farr and Bozovich voting no. And let's go then to our issue of item 6C, which is our Travel Lane County semi-annual report. And I know that Carrie has been very patient, waiting for this time on the agenda. And if Carrie, you could come to the table and introduce your colleague, if he's still there, that would be great.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to provide our semi-annual report. We've got, excuse me, 4 members of the staff destination marketing adventure team here today. Myself, Andy Vabora, our Vice President of Stakeholder Relations, Janice Ross, who heads up our Convention and Sports Marketing Department and serves as the Executive Director of Eugene Cascades and Coast Sports, and our brand new Vice President of Integrated Marketing, Emily Forsha, who I'll bring back to introduce to you next time. And then I have 2 board members who get blue ribbons today. Commissioner Farr and Courtney Griesel is here. Oh, Sarah Means is here. 3 blue ribbons for board members, and Steve Mokoraski, of course, comes to our board meetings on occasion too. So
I'm compelled to be here.
Want to just say thank you to everyone. It is quite adventurous out there, and so we're thrilled to be here. So I'm going to use the document that you have in your agenda packet. You're not missing anything by not being in the room. We're going to just roll through this report, and I have just a couple of additions to it. We're halfway through the program year. What's in your document really reflects July through December, and we've really seen great measurable success throughout our campaign programs and have been thrilled also to be able to leverage some of Travel Oregon's marketing muscle. For those of you new to the commission, our vision and mission statements, our brand promise, that's all on page 2. We are very focused on generating overnight visitors and increasing those visitors because that's really tied to the funding source, both for Travel Lane County and for all of the other recipients of transient room tax. The better job we do at growing that, the more dollars you invest in the marketing process and the more revenue there is for the other recipients. On page 3, I want to add just a couple of things. You can see our room tax revenue total for the first 6 months. We did anticipate a slow start to this year. Remember, we're comparing to a solar eclipse that took place in 2017, so we knew that hotel revenues and transient room tax was going to dip as we got started in this program year. I will say, though, as we look at demand indicators, We have continued to grow demand, which is our mission. And for the calendar year, which would be January through December, demand for hotel rooms in Lane County was up 4.2%, which exceeded the statewide average of 1.4% growth in demand, and all the regions in Oregon other than Central Oregon, which has just really been on fire, and it's extremely irritating to us, but they're still kind of cooking our goose a little bit and drawing a little higher demand. Demand growth is particularly important for us as we have all the new hotel room supply. So some of the key indicators for individual properties, their occupancy rates, those have softened because it's about a 12% increase in supply, and we're growing demand as fast as we can to kind of keep all the indicators up and keep rate up and overall revenues up. The last thing I want to say on this topic is that we know we are going to finish the year with another potentially slow month in June. So we're currently, we started off slow, we're currently ahead. We've had 3 months ahead of last year's totals, but we know we won't have those NC2A track championships in June. Those championships are extremely lucrative for us from an economic perspective. They drive compression, which means they completely fill our hotel supply, and that drives rate up, and that drives revenue up, and that drives room tax up. So we we'll still have a healthy June, but it may lag last year, and so we're hoping we gain enough in these intervening months that we end up about flat. That is what we've projected for the year is sort of flat, and we'll feel good if we can get there because of Hayward Field being dark. So hopefully that makes sense to those of you listening on the telephone. And then we just want to also point out that many of you might have seen a project that we worked on with the Willamette Valley Visitors Association. It's a very large in-airport display, and it highlights the Willamette Valley, which is known as Oregon's wine country. It started in the San Jose airport to support that direct service that we had at the time. It moved to Portland and was on display in Portland. It was on display here in Eugene. It went to SeaTac. And today it's in Boise at a huge international travel trade show going on in Boise, where tour operators around the world are seeing it. So we're really excited that we've had the opportunity to leverage that marketing project many times over. The other thing that's noted on page 3 is Heceta Head Lighthouse being featured in Travel Oregon's winter campaign. That has been really a great opportunity for us to focus on the winter season, which is the slowest season at the coast. And so we've been thrilled to have that campaign in market, and we've really drafted off of that campaign with a lot of our digital work as well. Moving to page 4, you've got some highlights there. You may be aware that we have moved our Eugene Ale Trail and our wine tasting trail to an online app. So we continue to have the paper versions, but we also have a digital version, and we're tracking great downloads on that app and great visitation to tasting rooms of all kind. And we are able to track overnight visits as well for those who redeem for a prize. And so that has been going really, really well. We've got a lot of interest in additional trails, and so we're meeting with different stakeholder groups on things that they're interested in. And then we continue to work with our economic development partners under the leadership of Lane Workforce Partnership. They've continued to do just an incredible job of pulling all of us together. Sarah Means is certainly part of that group and is showing great leadership for Lane County. And those 3 targeted sectors that we're focused on are getting an extra boost of coordination, and that is technology, food and beverage, and the wood product sectors. A brand new awareness campaign is posting at Eugene Airport this week. It's been paid for by private businesses within each of those 3 sectors, but it highlights the strengths of those industries, and everybody coming through Eugene Airport, which is 1.5 million people each year coming and going, will see a campaign that is in the place of what you're used to seeing at the airport, the Tracktown campaign that wraps those pillars and banners along the walkways. That's going to feature technology companies, food and beverage companies, and wood products companies. And I think you'll be really proud of it. So make sure you're flying Eugene when you're coming and going, and you can get a good look at that. Another highlight in the program year was the fact that the Capitol Christmas tree came from the Willamette National Forest, and the tree made 3 stops in Lane County on its way to Washington, D.C. It was outside of Cabela's in Springfield, it was up in Oak Ridge, and it was up the Mackenzie River corridor. And we also got to participate in a great program with the Forest Service on the placement of Christmas tree ornaments along trails, and more than 200 ornaments were placed, and visitors from 11 different states found ornaments as they were out hiking on the forest trails. Moving to page 5, you can see that we had a Travel Oregon mural go up in Oak Ridge, which was just fabulous. Those murals are going up around the state. And we were really excited to participate with Cottage Grove in the Great Toga Party commemorating the 40th anniversary of Animal House. I know you had an Oregon Country Fair item on your agenda, on your consent agenda, I think, today. Just note that this coming year will be the 50th anniversary for the Oregon Country Fair. And then we've talked a little bit about industry partners in terms of our hotel partners. We do have a couple more hotels coming online. You're well aware of the Gordon, which is part of the Obie development, with groundbreaking having taken place. And then there will be a True by Hilton coming to life in Glenwood, and we anticipate, I actually don't know what the current status is of the Town Place Suites next to Valley River Inn, but I know they're still planning that project. I don't know that they've gotten to permitting yet. When we get to our program numbers, we're marking growth in confirmed room nights coming out of the convention and sports section. Our social media connections for those 2 target markets are growing as well. And our earned media stories are showing good growth in terms of impressions. So remember that on the convention and sports side, those are business-to-business targets for us. We're actually targeting event planners in those 2 markets as compared to what we're doing on the leisure side. And everything year-to-date is looking good through those program areas. Moving to leisure on page 8, we've seen good growth in our digital marketing programs there as well. Social media connections up 11%. Earned media impressions up 6 times, just about 6 times what they were last year, and good solid growth. We are continuing our Go campaign and our print advertising. Our impressions are up 118% on the print side. And really the only couple of numbers that we have lagging, our bulk brochure distribution number is lagging, but it is just really a timing issue. We'll get all of those brochures out for the full year as we do every year. Those go out to rest areas, hotels, and we're working on a relens of what we have called our adventure guide that goes into rest areas. And as that project comes online, those will be stocked out in those rest areas. The other number that's lagging is our visitor contacts number. And we've changed our strategy a little bit in our mobile outreach, which is where we see a lot of contacts taking place. And we're being a little more strategic with how we deploy our mobile visitor van and our bicycle program. And so most of the decline that you see in the visitor contacts number is in that mobile outreach program. We've had under a 2% drop at the Adventure Center. And then when we get to integrated marketing, when we came to you with our full year report in what was probably August, we were seeing just a little bit of softening in visits to our web site. And we're just really thrilled to be able to report that our web user sessions are up 20%. Individuals accessing our website are up 21%. That's still due in large part to our work around search engine optimization and focusing in on organic traffic, but our digital media campaigns are working really well too, and we're putting money into paid search, and so we're making sure that our site comes up for people who are looking for travel information that's relevant to our destination, and they're finding our way to our website. And then we've continued our video work. The one thing we're not able to do today that we had planned to do, we're going to show you the Springfield video, which we're super proud of, and the Springfield Chamber debuted it at their annual dinner this year. But if you go onto our website, and this is just a good note for all commissioners, our social media channels are show right on the side of our website pages, and you can get to our YouTube channel, and you can get to the community videos for the communities that are in each of your districts. So anytime you need to access our social channels, you can do that right from our website. And if you have stakeholders who are talking to you about video or photography assets, that will give everyone a good sense of the kind of video that we have in our library. And of course, we make that available to our communities and stakeholder partners free of charge for projects that they're working on. We were really thrilled to work with Florence and Lane County. We worked together with you and the City of Florence on a workforce video this year, and so that's gotten great use by the City of Florence and the Florence Area Chamber of Commerce. And then on our stakeholder relations side, we have 3 program areas that focus on marketing the destination to audiences and targets outside the area. And then we have our stakeholder relations program area, which really is focused on making sure you, other elected officials, community leaders, and residents understand the industry and our organization. And that's the work that Andy heads up for us. He's had a great first half of the year with earned media impressions up over 300%. We're doing some work with our local chamber partners, particularly in the rural areas, sponsoring some of their business after hours. And then we had a great outreach program with Springfield as well. As the public house got ready to have its grand opening, as it sort of was relaunching, we actually did a Savor Springfield, another one of those passport programs, and just had a really successful project with downtown Springfield, which I'm sure you've all noticed is really coming to life. So that's just a really brief run through of the materials that you have in your packet. We're feeling really good about the health of the industry. We're looking forward to all of the great projects that we're all hearing about coming to life in the next couple of years. We're excited about the Town Square project that you're focused on as you look at your assets in downtown Eugene. I will let those of you know who aren't here today, we kind of did our cross-block walk to get here, and the community's getting used to not having the butterfly lot right now. There are about 3 cars in it, and it is full of snow. So the streets are clear, but the sidewalks and parking lots, not so much. And so congratulations to those of you who are tucked in safely at home. I do kind of want to throw the gauntlet down to Commissioner Bozovich because I made it in from his district, and I'm wondering why he's not here. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have, and look forward to seeing all of you in person next time. This is a first for us.
Well, go ahead and finish up, but I do want to call on Commissioner Bozovich because I know he has to go in 13 minutes. He's on county business in Washington, D.C., so we appreciate his effort to be there.
Oh, well, I withdraw that then. That's very important work.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Jay.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Commissioner Sorensen. I just want to say great report. And yeah, I just couldn't quite make it back. The airport was closed. as you know, Commissioner Sorensen. Now I'm in the Brayburn office building right now, sitting in the cafeteria with the phone pasted on my ear. So,
well, thank you so much for staying on the line for us. We appreciate that.
No problem at all. And I will have actually a little bit more time, Commissioner Sorensen. I can probably be available probably till about almost another hour here because my 2 o'clock meeting got canceled because Representative DeFazio is stuck in Eugene.
Very good. So other commissioners want to be recognized to ask questions or make comments on the travel lane.
Yes, please. This is Far.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You know, there are so many good things to be said about Travel Lane County, and I hear about it beyond our borders. You know, I hear about it, the marketing that we are doing at Travel Lane County is really phenomenal. And you describe what the mobile airport marketing, that really gets a lot of attention. I hear about it from time to time from people who are traveling here. And you do a really good job. I'd like to compliment Janice Ross, Convention and Sports Marketing. We kind of lead the industry in that, don't we? I mean, that's my impression. Maybe I'm biased on that, but I don't see anything that really is as comprehensive as the work you do, particularly in airports. And, you know, when people are traveling throughout the Northwest region, we really want them to come here. But even if they're not coming here, they see us.
Well, I really appreciate your recognition of Janice in particular. She serves on the National Association of Sports Commissions Board, so she's taking Lane County to the national level and is in a leadership role for us. And as you know, sports has been a pretty primary area of focus for us for many years, and we're generating a lot of great business and a great reputation from that body of work.
And thank you for that. But along those lines, I'd like to say that, you know, one thing that you do well at Travel Lane County, Eugene, Cascades, and Coast, is you use all of the resources inside of our community to move things forward. And I'll take the University of Oregon, for instance. The partnership that we have with the University of Oregon, you describe it pretty well when you say, and I quote, "Hopefully we can get there," you're talking about some certain numbers, "with Hayward Field being dark." The fact
Hayward Field is a big generator of economic impact for the community. There's no doubt about it.
Palo Alto is going to get some room stays that we aren't going to get just based on the pre-classic coming up.
That's true.
You know, so but that you recognize the University of Oregon, and I look at a former great linebacker from the University of Oregon over here. Don't look behind you, Andy, it's you. You know, the partnership that we have there, you take full advantage of that. And I am so pleased and proud that Lane County is your main partner in funding and in direction for the organization. You guys, to my fellow board members, if you don't know this, she's at the top of the class. So thank you very much.
Well, we want to make all of you proud of our work. So our stakeholders are your stakeholders. They're a complete overlap, and we really take our sense of stewardship strongly, and we want the commission to be proud of our work, and we work toward that all the time. So we welcome your feedback and encourage you if you hear concerns or if there are things that we can improve. We definitely want to hear from you on that.
Bravo. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Commissioner Burney.
I just want to reiterate that I really wanted, just so that I could have association with Lane County Travel and Ms. Westland, to be the board representative, the commissioner representative on your board, but I had to defer to the greater experience and commitment of Commissioner Farr. But I wanted it, Carrie, and this is an opportunity for me to share with the rest of the commissioners how Carrie has gone above and beyond every time. She and her staff spent time with me when I was a lowly, unlikely candidate, because they wanted every candidate to understand the impact and role that their organization plays in our community. As recently as last week, she and many of her team, including Springfield's mayor, brought me up to speed on several issues that were both county and Springfield specific. And finally, I had the opportunity to invite friends of a huge real estate investment, development, hold and operate company to look at Glenwood and the rest of the county. And Carrie went out of her way, spent a day with these people. And Carrie, if I haven't shared with you, both the president and the CFO of Sun Hill Properties, which is the West Coast division holding company of this large conglomerate, were hugely impressed and made the statement that they hope they have the opportunity to invest in our county when the time is right, largely because of the expertise and comfort that Carrie provided them during the trip. So thank you so much. And I'm so sorry I couldn't be there in person.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners want to be recognized?
Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Buck.
I'm sorry we weren't able to see your video there for Springfield. I would like to see that look online. I'm going through the material here online through our meeting and looking at all these wonderful pictures of sunny days and wishing to be able to go out and visit all those places as I look out to 1.5 feet of snow in my yard. Just want to express my gratitude for your work, and thanks for coming in on a day like today.
Thank you.
And Carrie, I just wanted to say I remain a strong supporter not only of your leadership at Travel Lane, but also Travel Lane as an organization. I feel like every time I turn around, there's something in the community that involves Travel Lane, and I just really appreciate all your leadership and good counsel you give us. And I'm glad to see that things are going well. I did want to ask a question about the upcoming Lane County budget and what thoughts you have on if there's any thing you want to bring to our attention about the budget, and in particular the allocation or the contract, or where things stand between Lane County and Travel Lane.
Thank you for that. We do have a 3-year agreement in place with the county for 2.1 points of TRT. And for the new commissioners, in the early 90s, the hotel industry actually volunteered a 2-point increase in the TRT specifically to fund the destination marketing work. So the way that we have that codified isn't the right word, but the way that we have that in place right now is a rolling 3-year grant agreement. Each year when I come to give you your year-end report, which is typically in late August, you extend that grant agreement by 1 year. And that allows us to do multi-year strategic planning and honor our multi-year contracts, and it ensures that we have notice if you are ever changing your mind about the relationship, so that we have a little bit of time to respond to that appropriately. So I don't think there's a budget impact for the coming year, given that that grant agreement is in place, and we will be asking you to extend it for another year when we come before you in August.
So next time really for us and Travel Lane would be August, when you formally ask for an extension on the current agreement.
That's correct.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks very much for your great work. Do any other commissioners want to say anything or be recognized under this item? Okay, well, thank you, Carrie. We really appreciate all your hard work, and thanks for coming in on such a difficult day for a number of us, and we appreciate your hard work. I'm now going to go back to our adjustments to the agenda, and when Ms. Jones and I spoke about the difficulty of this meeting, and we've already taken care of a number of items, and now that Commissioner Bozovich can be on the phone with us for a little longer, I'm wondering if Steve Mokrahysky, you could kind of help me here with the rest of the meeting. I'm available for another 53, a little under 53 minutes. I was hoping we could start in on the executive session, and I believe that Mr. Dingell is available. The commissioners who called in on the phone number will have to, if we go to our executive session, we'll have to hang up and then recall that same phone number, because that will be piped into the commissioner's conference room. But before we did that, I wanted to get Mr. Mokrahysky's perspective on anything that he feels needs to be addressed by the board when 5 of us are on the phone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, it's my understanding that you can all stay on the line and we will hang up and then we'll redial. So you all can hold tight, and then we will reconnect in the BCC. So you'll be there. So go ahead and just hold tight. Yeah, I think exec session was the next thing there. We still have county administrator announcements and commissioner business, and then and that I imagine can be taken up this afternoon after the 2 public works items. So if you'd like, Mr. Chair, I think we're ready to go into exec session unless you have other business you want to wrap up.
I just want to, while we have all 5 commissioners available for the next approximately an hour, I'd like to try to use that time for the executive session. And the other thing I wanted to bring out is that since Commissioner Bozievich and I, at least I won't be available for the public works items 11A and B, and for whatever other executive session happens later, I was hoping that the commissioners would conduct the public hearings and further deliberate, but that these items would also be rolled to March 13 when we have that additional time to handle things that aren't going to get finished today. But I understand we legally have to move ahead with those public hearings and deliberations today. Okay. Anything further, Mr. Mokrahysky?
No.
Okay, good. So at this time, I will recess the Board of Commissioners to be reconvened in the Board of Commissioners conference room. Let's say 5 minutes, 11:05, and get staff time to get there. And then we're supposed to just stay on the line. Is that correct, Mr. Mokrahysky?
Yes.
Well, I guess
Okay,
we could
so-
do either. We could also get off and jump back on.
Okay, we can do either. Okay. So let's just be in recess, and then I'll ask staff between now and then to get me the language for the
Commissioner
executive
Sorensen?
session. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you mind reading us into executive session from this meeting?
I would do that if I had it in front of me, and unfortunately I don't have it in front of me.
I can get it in front of me. Would you read it?
That'd be great, and then I'll do that.
Okay, give me 1 second, and I will lead the board into executive session.
I do not have that language, or I would do the same. So.
Is everyone there?
Yes.
Sorry, I got dropped. Are we?
Okay.
I can't tell what. Are we still in the board meeting? Should I continue reading?
Yeah, we're still in the board meeting, and I can ask you to read the executive session so we can recess for our executive session.
Okay, I'm going to try again to read us in. Okay, the Board of County Commissioners will meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations and to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602D and H, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previous. No decision may be made in executive session. We reserve the right to come back out into public session should the need arise.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we will be in recess to be reconvened in a few minutes in the Commissioners' conference room, and we'll be in executive session at that time. So we're in recess. Thank you very much.